and welcome to Tall Tales and Short Stories with Tim.
And Tony. He's Tony, and I'm Tim.
So, as promised...
This is episode 5, which we have done, which we have a whole thing planned for this one. Like, every 5 episodes is a serial killer, and I get to have free reign of that.
And I come in blind and not knowing anything.
And I really am excited about this one.
But first, I do have an update to our second episode.
Yeah, that worked. No, that'll be the first episode. Because that was Portals to Hell.
Yeah. I actually have a coworker that lives about a mile or two from the Purple Church.
Oh, whoa, what? Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And he's older. He's in his 50s, early 60s now.
Okay, late 50s.
So
early 50s.
he used to go there as a kid.
Oh, no.
And it was actually a church.
Uh-huh.
And it was like a small town, one room.
Yeah, the small town.
Five
pews.
Pews, yeah.
Yeah.
Like 5 pews to it. And yeah, they actually, when it got demolished, they actually used to go, be teenagers and dick around, spray paint shit all over it.
Oh my God.
So, to confirm, it was a church, there was the basement, and there was creepy shit that happened.
I love it!
And it is now, the basement is actually, I guess they caved it in or something, the current property owners actually caved it in.
Like they filled it in and everything?
Yeah.
Ah, man, so we can't go there anymore.
No, so we can't go spend the night.
Man, I was looking forward to it, too.
No, you weren't. You weren't going to go, you chicken.
Yeah, you caught me.
Yeah,
I caught me. I'm cowardly. I'm yellow. I don't care. But today, we are not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about serial killers. Specifically one. And even further, she has a tie to Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yep. And so, where else are we going to begin? Let's just get right to it. Poison is a woman's weapon. A common thought that was first said in The Pursuit to Algiers, a 1945 film that starred Basil Rathbone as infamous detective Sherlock Holmes. The notion has been in the mass mindset for decades, but for this particular killer, it truly was her choice of weapon. Over a span of 30 years, Nannie Doss killed 11 people before she was finally apprehended and confessed to the crimes. 11 people, 30 years. Come on. Her motivation? Money and the pursuit of the real romance of life. Her methods of killing, as well as her physical appearance, led to many people calling her, among other things, the Giggling Granny, the Black Widow, Lady Bluebeard. So, Tony, join me in this incredibly unassuming killer story in this week's episode of Tall and Short.
I hate you. Oh God, serial killers creep me out so much.
Okay, so this is our 5th episode, not 4th, this is our 5th episode, and we'll be doing something a little special for it. I'm gonna go over a serial killer, as I've mentioned, that Tony has no idea about. He knows some of the names, but he doesn't know the full details.
Yeah. I watch the documentaries like every other white woman on Netflix.
So we're gonna get his blind reactions to the story, which will make this all the better. Now, to make things even further more interesting, I actually have with me a case file. The official Tall and Short case file that has photos related to the topic. And I will give this to Tony, and yeah, I'm not kidding you. Tony, what am I holding in my hands?
You're holding a manila pamphlet case file.
Yep. Just like the regular thing that you see in detective stories.
Law and Order.
Yeah, pretty much. And so when I tell Tony to open it up, he is going to look at the first photo, and then when I tell him to look at the next photo, he will do so accordingly. So, on my signal, buddy.
You're enjoying this way too much, and I'm not happy.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into this. I'm not even kidding.
I'm gonna make a frog episode.
Even further, I've made certain that Tony has also put away his laptop and his phone, so he can't look ahead and spoil the phone. It's
also because my laptop's updating, so...
That too, so that happened. Now then, let's get this going, shall we? So, where else do we start? Let's start at the beginning of this, all right?
One last thing before we do.
Yep.
Tim, how many shots did you have?
I only had 2 shots of rum. It's no worries.
And what time is it?
So what? It's 9:40 in the morning. I don't care.
Okay, just making sure.
This'll help out, okay? Anyway, November 4th, 1905. Nancy, or Nannie, Hazel was born in Blue Mountain, Alabama. Blue Mountain no longer exists. Instead, it's a part of Anniston, Alabama in Calhoun County. I did a lot of looking into that. She was born to James F. and Louisa Lou Hazel. She was a second of 5 children with 3 sisters and 1 brother. Anna Mae Hazel, W. Francis Hazel, Addie Sula Hazel, and William Roscoe Hazel. Go ahead and open the first one. That's Nannie Doss. She's just a little old granny, isn't she?
I'm not looking forward to any of this. But yes, she looks like she would just bake you a cake or a pie or something.
We'll get to that when you just said it.
Damn it.
So, I'm also going to have you take the next photo. There's a second one underneath it. That is where Addison is located. That is a map I got from Wikipedia. That's the dark is Addison, and then that's its county up in Alabama. So, northeast Alabama, up that area.
Okay.
I was like, and then we'll leave that right there for the moment.
Yeah.
You can go back to her just to see that. There you go. Makes me think of Crow's class with all the maps.
Oh God,
I remember those.
Maps.
You only had to use a blue pen for those.
No, you were only allowed to use a blue pen.
Exactly.
I remember.
Yeah, only allowed to use a blue pen. No
Trauma.
black, no red, only blue pens. He was very adamant about that. Anyway, so Nannie's childhood was not the least bit ideal and was very unhappy. Not only was she born just after the turn of the century, but she also grew up in a poor farming family in Alabama.
Dirt floors, outhouse, I assume.
Not even just that, but her father was a cruel and abusive man who would force his 5 children to work on the farm and do all the work. Not, like, obviously tilling the land, as well as various household chores like, cleaning the pots and pans, dusting, sweeping, everything, and not allowing them to go to school. Quite literally, if there was work to be done, the work got done. Their education suffered because of it.
Jesus.
So Nannie, she did not do well in school. And I'm going to call her Nannie because that was a nickname for Nancy.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to call her Nannie to make it easy on us. Her father was so overbearing that when she and her sisters reached their teenage years, he forbade them from wearing makeup and attractive clothing so that way they could be protected from being molested by men. He was, he was that kind of guy. The daughters were also not allowed to go to dances or social events because their father believed that they would be messed with by other men.
I mean, it's a father's mentality, I guess.
And it is also like it is the early 1900s, so it is that, but at the same token, still pretty overbearing even for the time. Yeah. But here's where we're going to get interesting. When Nannie was 7, so this is 1912, during a train ride to see family in southern Alabama, the train suddenly stopped, and she hit her head on the metal bar on the back of the seat in front of her.
Ooh.
Like, wham! Right here in the middle of her, right here, in the forehead.
Jesus.
Yeah. The injury put her into deep depressions, blackouts, headaches, and, according to her, mental instability. Some distant relatives of Nannie Doss actually said that she already had a mean streak about her. So, well before the injury, she was already a mean kid.
Yeah.
But, during her childhood, she did have some escape from her abusive father and the farm. She would read her mother's romantic magazines and stories, which made her dream of that idyllic romance, living with a loving man, happily ever after, the classic, fantasy story.
Fancy smut.
Yeah,
novels.
pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. As she got older, she loved looking into the Lonely Hearts column, which to us we're unfamiliar with because we have Tinder and
Craigslist,
Bumble. Essentially, it is like the missed connections of Craigslist is the Lonely Hearts column.
Yeah.
And in the magazines and newspapers, and And we would get that. We had that in newspapers until Craigslist showed up, and it was just people looking for companionship or love in those columns. And another escape of hers was definite rebellion, because she was reaching her teenage years in this one, right? She and her sisters would sit by the windows on the porch, and they would hear the sounds and see the flickering lights of parties and dances going on at neighboring farms late at night. And it's just like, oh, I want to be there. Kind of like Ariel in Little Mermaid. Just, I want to be where the people are. But that didn't happen. And so to get away with that, Nannie would actually sneak away sometimes, and she would have her fun with the boys in the hayloft. Easiest place to hide from her dad if she wanted to bring things over.
Roll around in the hay.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
And this was a safe place because, well, think about it. If she's fooling around with a lot of guys, she's going to be able to stay hidden from her dad.
Yeah.
And her mother may have actually known about these exploits and kept quiet about it, which I could see why, because...
Yeah, I mean,
if Nannie had, come with child or pregnant, she'd be able to get away from the farm. Yeah. Something her mother would not be able to do for a long time. Then in 1921, gonna jump ahead a little, at the age of 16, Nannie was married to Charlie Braggs, who was about 16, 17...
About the norm for back then.
Yeah, gotta think about it. This is 1920s, so we're also in the roaring 20s. We're slowly making our way towards the Great Depression.
Yep.
Which a lot of stuff, that doesn't, for funny enough, all that doesn't necessarily play into Nannie and her life.
Well, yeah, I mean, she was born dirt poor, so I mean...
It didn't affect her that much.
Oh no, nothing has changed. Okay.
Pretty much. It was only if you were, wealthy in New York that it affected you.
Yeah.
Anyway. Let's see. But she met her husband, Charlie Braggs. She met him when the two were working at a linen factory, of all places. He was a handsome individual, and after 4 months of dating, they worked fast. They worked fast back then. And getting her father's approval, Nannie and Charlie were married. And the main reason for her father's approval was because Charlie took care of his mother, who was a single, unwed mother.
I feel like that's going to come back into play, isn't it?
Oh, she's going to come into play. But a single, unwed mother. So, right there, it's already like, oh, she's, not going to be seen as good back then. Back then, they had a lot of very poor attitudes about people who were,
there was very negative.
A lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Charlie would take care of his mother, putting his paychecks toward her instead of jazz music from New York City or parties.
That evil music of jazz.
Pretty much, and that, respecting your elders, good old-fashioned beliefs. That's why James liked Charlie. Charlie was so devoted to his mother, in fact, that his mother insisted to him that she live with a newlywed couple.
Oh.
Yeah. And because of this, Charlie's mother took almost all of her son's attention, as well as restricting Nannie from doing the things she wanted to do. Essentially, she traded abuse from an actual biological parent, her father,
to the in-law.
To an in-law, her mother-in-law.
I mean, I feel like there's a trope about mother-in-laws.
In fact, Nancy actually was quoted well after, she was caught.
Yeah, after the fact.
She said, I married, as my father wished, in 1921 to a boy I only knowed about 4 or 5 months who had no family, only a mother who was unwed and who had taken over my life completely when we were married. She'd never seen anything wrong with what she'd done, but she would take spells. She would not let my own mother stay the night. So, essentially, say, for example, that, Nannie wanted Charlie to take her to a nice dinner.
Yeah.
His mother would then have these fainting spells and act like she was in despair so she wouldn't lose her little boy. Yep. Her mother-in-law was much like that.
I hate that.
Yeah, she's a terrible person.
Oh my god.
Let's see. Between 1923 and 1927, the marriage between Nannie and Charlie produced 4 daughters. But what was once thought to be the idyllic marriage quickly turned into a very unhappy one. Nannie began to drink and became addicted to cigarettes.
I mean, they were healthy back then, so it's a good thing.
And even further, to get even a little crazier, both she and Charlie committed infidelity against each other.
I mean, I feel like that was going to happen with the mother-in-law throwing monkey wrenches in left and right.
Charlie would leave for several days on end. Like we're talking like maybe a week he would be gone. And in that time, Nannie would also be going to having different men ogle her at parties and dances, and she would just feel like, the girl next door. Because she was in her 20s. Because think about it, she was married in 1921 at the age of 16.
Yeah.
And it is, between 1923 and 1927, she's just coming into her late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
She's still feeling sexy. She should, she wants that. But in 1927, the couple lost their 2 middle daughters.
Oh.
Early one morning in 1927, the couple lost their 2 middle daughters to suspected food poisoning after eating breakfast one morning. Charlie then fled with the couple's eldest daughter, Melvina, out of fear that Nannie had murdered the 2 daughters, while leaving Nannie to take care of their youngest daughter, Florina. I did try to look up the names of the 2 daughters who were dead.
Couldn't find anything.
I looked, and it was difficult. Records back then were not very good.
No.
And this was 1920s, so it's like, yeah.
Did you catch ages for any of them?
They would have been like 3 or 4. They would have been children. Melvina was the oldest. Actually, they would have been 2 or 3. Melvina was like 4 or 5.
Okay.
And Florina was like a newborn.
Okay.
So, big time. Shortly after that, though, Nannie began working for a cotton mill to support herself and her daughter, Florina. Interestingly enough, Charlie's mother also died around that time as well, but of all things...
Conveniently.
But of all things, though, it was a natural death. No foul play was involved. I actually did some in-depth look, and it was not foul play. I was like, coincidence? Then I was like, no way.
No. Coincidence, yes, but...
Yeah, it's full on happened. Then in 1928... Charlie returned a year later with his daughter Melvina, as well as a new love interest. I couldn't find her name. A divorcee with her own child. So Charlie and Nannie divorced the summer of 1928, with Charlie going with his new love interest, and Nannie taking her 2 living daughters, Melvina and Florina, and moving back in with her parents.
God.
So back to the abuse.
Right.
Charlie always maintained he divorced and left Nannie because he was frightened of her. And he would be right. He would be the lucky one out of all of this.
He's the one that got away.
Pretty much. But, once again, Nannie took care of her loneliness the only way she knew how. By poring over the more romantic magazine stories, as well as back to the Lonely Hearts columns once again. She found one particular advert that caught her attention from a 23-year-old Florida man named Robert Frank Harrelson. We're going to call him Frank from here on.
Okay.
He would send her romantic letters, and she even sent him a cake. Just like absolute classic lovey-dovey 1920s stuff back then,
Yeah.
They met and married shortly after in 1929. She was 24, he was 23. He was going after the older women for sure. Nannie moved herself and her daughters down to Jacksonville, where Frank lived and worked. So Jacksonville, Florida.
Why would you Well, I can't say that I did. Why would you willingly move to Florida?
Once again, things seemed idyllic, but after a few months, Frank's true colors came out.
Let me guess. He was abusive.
A violent alcoholic with a criminal record of assault.
So little touch and go.
Little touch and go. Yeah. Despite this, Nannie and Frank stayed married for 16 years.
She just can't really catch a break, can she?
We're about to get into some depth here. In 1943, Nannie became a grandmother to a boy named Robert Lee Haynes, who was the firstborn of her daughter Melvina and her husband, Mosey Haynes.
Okay.
Yeah. Doss came by to help make sure her daughter and grandson were okay. Then 2 years later, in 1945, Melvina gave birth to another baby, but the baby died shortly after, about an hour or so.
Okay, so something medical related, I'm sure.
Under the effects of ether, which would make anybody groggy, as well as exhausted from giving birth, Melvina swore that she saw her own mother, Nannie, take a hat pin and stab the baby in the head with it, killing the little girl. Open up the file to the third photo, the third and final photo. There's the second one, and those are hat pins. Oh, those are hat pins.
Yeah, I was thinking, Jesus.
No, hat pins are about that big.
Yeah, dude. I was thinking like a thumbtack size thing.
Nope, no. We're talking like a couple inches in length, and
well, that's not a natural cause at all, or a medical cause.
But we'll get there. Melvina, even though she was under the effects of the ether, she did ask her husband and her sister about what had happened. And all they could say was that Nannie had told them the baby was dead and that she had been fiddling with a pin in her hand. And the doctors, they couldn't come up with a cause of death, because apparently in the 1940s...
they were blind and couldn't see a hole in a head.
And you know, kids just died. Like, there was an infant mortality rate that was much worse than today.
What happened? I don't know.
Kid died.
Kid died.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it happens.
And after this, which kind of sucks, Melvina and Mosey began to drift apart, and I would assume they divorced after, because...
probably.
Well, after this, Melvina began dating a soldier, whose name I couldn't find, but apparently he was a soldier. But Nannie didn't like this soldier, and so while Melvina was visiting her father, Charlie, after getting into a very, very fiery argument with Nannie, Robert, the 2-year-old, died of asphyxiation while under Nannie's care on July 7th, 1945.
What the fuck?
2 months later, Nannie collected a $500 insurance claim on Robert. So, her 2 daughters and her grandchildren. Already we have 4 people. Nannie hasn't even gotten to her husband yet.
Jesus.
Yeah, so that head injury may have been something, or maybe she did have a mean streak. Either way.
I mean, either way, she had a mean streak. It's just, did the head injury amplify it?
Absolutely. And so then in 1945, after Japan surrendered at the end of World War II, Frank, who had actually served in the time, celebrated like everybody else. He got super drunk, because, you know...
Kissed a nurse in the middle of New York City.
Oh, yeah.
We all did that.
That old photo. He got super drunk at a party and then returned home, and for anybody who is listening, this is a trigger warning in the event, just to say, he raped Nannie. Oh. Like, he came home and was like, I'm drunk, I'm gonna fuck you no matter what, and and she just sat there, just like, this is it. And this was the last straw for her.
Oh, shit.
The next day, she found his whiskey bottle, poured out about half of it, and put some rat poison in it. He died a very painful death later that evening. She then rinsed out the bottle and threw it away. Some people, they thought it was food poisoning. And that's, 5 deaths now.
It's alcohol poisoning.
She collected the insurance money off of Frank's death, just as she had with her grandchildren. Well, grandson, at least.
One of the 2. Jesus.
So she's already got 5 people, and it's 1945. So she's already about less than 20 years, she's killed 5 people. So it's about to get crazier.
In a pretty dramatic fashion for all of them. Like, the asphyxiation seems to be the most bland murder.
I mean, kid may have eaten something and died, but I don't know. But kid died. And back then, child death just was a bit more common, I guess.
Yeah.
But back to the Lonely Hearts column for Nannie Doss. In 1947, 2 years after she killed her second husband, she found another man in Lexington, North Carolina, Arlie Lanning, whom she married 3 days later. Went right to it. Just didn't stop.
Just Vegas that thing, huh?
Pretty much. And much like Frank, Arlie was an alcoholic womanizer. So
he's about to be womanized.
But instead of disappearing for days on end, like the previous husbands, Nannie would be the one disappearing before coming back to play the doting housewife role. So she would go out and have affairs just like Arlie did, but she would come back and act like nothing. And then in 1950, she used rat poison to put in his food, and he died shortly after, but it was diagnosed as heart failure because everybody knew that Arlie Lanning was a heavy drinker, so it's like, well, his stomach is messed up and his liver's shot, so he died of alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
Wink,
wink, nudge, nudge.
It was able to get away with it. And then the community around Lexington all came to Lanning's funeral to support Nannie. That's 6. That's 6 people now that she's killed.
Jesus.
But we're not through with North Carolina yet. The house that Arlie and Nannie had called home soon went up in flames. Now, it's a bit conspicuous because the thing is, the house was meant for Arlie's sister in the event of his death.
Mm-hmm.
But Nannie...
I wonder what happened.
But Nannie said she wasn't there because she had the television set in the back of her car being taken to a repair store. And this is, the 1950s, I think.
So she was taking it to the Circuit City.
This is 1940. This is 1950s. This is back when television was, big. Became the big thing, so she was taking it there. But, of course, the house went up in flames, and so what did Nannie do? She quickly pocketed the insurance money from the fire before she left North Carolina.
My God.
Lanning's mother, Nancy's mother-in-law, Sarah Lanning, also died in her sleep about this time.
I feel like...
There's a possibility. And then Nannie quickly left North Carolina and moved in with her sister, Dovey, who was battling cancer at the time.
Oh, God.
Nannie would help her bedridden sister as best she could. But shortly after Nannie arrived, Dovey died in her sleep.
Yeah.
Be it from the cancer or from Nannie taking care of her own into her own hands.
Oh, Christ, this is depressing.
I'm leaning towards the latter on this one. I'm not even kidding.
I wonder why. Jesus.
Yeah, dude.
Do you think she rat poisoned it? I feel like that's her choice.
Rat poison, arsenic, cyanide, or even just a pillow over... Or even one flew of the cuckoo's nest with a pillow.
I want to see this next pic.
There's no more pictures after that.
Oh, there's no more? Okay.
That's it.
I was like, Christ, I'm going to see, crime photo scenes or something and vomit in my mouth.
I couldn't find photos that were crime-related. Everything was in the courthouse, like the first photo of Nannie.
Yeah.
And everything else. And she doesn't look like
She
killer.
looks like everyone's grandma.
Exactly. That's why she got the nickname the Giggling Granny, and we're going to get into that, too. So, by this time, at the age of 47, Nannie began to gain some weight, her hair began to gray, and she began to wear glasses, as the photo you see there.
As the photo dictates, and started growing curlers in her hair.
But she wouldn't be able to turn the heads of young men again, the young curly-haired boys.
I mean, unless they're into that sort of thing.
But thinking about it. But now she could find the wandering eyes of older gentlemen who might like a fuller-figured woman like her, who still had that girlish giggle to her.
And can cook like a mofo.
Absolutely.
With poison.
And so she went back on the husband hunt. She joined a dating service called the Diamond Circle Club, which seems like one of those speed dating things.
It sounds like a cover for the Illuminati. Shit, we figured it out. Run.
I think we have. Get out of here! But it was through this service that she found husband number 4, Richard L. Morton. That's right, we have a guy named Dick in the mix now. I don't know how we get that, but it's like a lot of serial killer episodes, there's always somebody named Richard involved.
I'm going to do a side story real quick.
Okay.
At my old job at a Harley dealership, we had a retired cop that detailed our bikes, and he was actually a crime scene member, or crime scene team member. And he would always watch these documentaries and, critique them. Mm-hmm. And his wife said, there's always a Dick at the crime scene. There's also a Larry. His name was Larry. So she would shoot every time he'd start critiquing. All right, listen, Larry. You don't have to be a dick. But yeah, going with there's always a dick in the mix.
Yeah.
Phrasing on that.
Big time phrasing.
But phrasing. There was always a Larry, and Larry was this over-analytical, analyzed every little speck of dirt. There's always a tightwad. And his name is Larry.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, so we're talking about Dick now.
Yeah, pretty much. Richard L. Morton. Dick Morton.
Dick
Alrighty.
Morton.
Yeah, this is husband number 4, and they married in 1952 in Emporia, Kansas, of all places.
We're getting closer.
Yep, we are. We went from...
I think I've been to Emporia.
I probably have a couple times.
I'm sure you have.
I'm from that area. But let's see, we've been from Alabama to North Carolina. Now we're in Kansas.
Don't forget Florida. We were there for a hot stint, weren't we?
Oh, I did forget that. Yeah, we were there for a hot stint. But from Florida, let's see. Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, and then we happened to find ourselves in Emporia, Kansas.
Christ.
So yeah, she's gotten around, so we're now in... So yeah, Kansas. That's a fun one. This man, Richard Dick, he wasn't an alcoholic like her previous
God,
husbands,
she broke the pattern.
but he was a womanizing cheat and who was immensely despondent, owing money to everyone.
Okay, so we haven't really broke the mold.
Now, like we've got a couple of things changed, but no breakage on the mold just yet.
Swap one addiction for the other, you know.
Pretty much. And Nannie's hopes of having, once again, that idyllic relationship, that idyllic love, went flatter than Kansas's background. And being from Kansas, there ain't a lot up there.
Oh, man. We're going to get so many Kansas people not liking us.
Oh, they're going to relate. They're going to be like, yeah, no, it's flat.
Yeah, no, I can see Arkansas from here.
Pretty much. Pretty much. And those don't even connect.
Listen, I only took one geography class. We're going to see Nebraska. Is that better, Tim?
Nebraska's also... I've driven through Nebraska. Like, my family and I went up to...
Corn.
Went up to the South Dakotas. There was no corn, actually, in the fields at the moment. It wasn't harvest season, but it was summer. So we went up to South Dakota, and we were coming back through Nebraska. We were on one stretch of road the entire way. No towns, no cities, maybe like a little bed and breakfast, and we only saw like 1 or 2 cars. That was it. It was blank. In fact, you want to know how much of a cheat Dick was? Here's how much of a cheat Dick was.
Here's how much of a cheating dick he was.
He would buy a nice necklace for Nannie, right? But then he'd buy another necklace like it's for another woman. So it's like he's...
I mean, one-stop shopping, I guess?
So it's like he's despondent, but he's still able to like, oh, I'll get this nice jewelry for my wife and then for my mistress. It's okay, great. Nannie eventually figured everything out because he would be out of the house for hours at a time when he said he'd just be going to the store.
Going out for coffee. Or, you know, what is it? Milk? Going out for milk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Milk and cigarettes, coming back. And, you know, when he'd come back, she would poke and prod him and ask him, like, what is going on? Why are you doing this?
Poke and prod him with a friggin' hat pin?
And, I wish. And he would just slide it off his shoulder by saying, well, I just dawdled about. I got talking with Mr. Smith about, you know, the corn out in the fields and meh.
See...
That's what he would claim to her.
So here's the thing. I do that all the time. Like, when I go out by myself, I constantly get stuck talking to someone.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
It started off in, like, you know, it would be like, you know, 30 minutes to get in town. Because they lived outside of Emporia, I would argue.
Yeah.
But then, you know, going into town and then it just would take longer. So it would go from, like, you know, 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours, so on.
To 3 days. I was just talking about corn.
And it's about to get really depressing right here.
Yeah, because up till now, it's been just a hunky-dory trip down
memory lane.
It's been a Lollipop Guild adventure.
This shouldn't have been memory lane. No, that's bad. Before Richard was murdered
Before she killed Dick
by poison, Nannie's mother, Louisa, came to stay with them after suffering a broken...
Christ, how old is her mother now?
80s.
Whew.
After suffering a broken hip and a dead husband. Old Papa John finally kicked the bucket in his 80s. Likely all cantankerous old man, too.
Probably just had too much garlic sauce.
Yeah, because I actually had to go back and see what her dad's name was, and it is John Hazel, so Old Papa John.
Yeah, definitely too much garlic sauce.
Absolutely, at that point. And he died in his 80s. He was a cantankerous old man. Like, if he was bad if he was a horribly abusive man when he was younger, he would have been worse as an 80-year-old.
Well, he was just too grumpy and too shitty to die.
And I have met people who are like that. You have met people who are like that. It's like, how are you still alive? It's like old geezer. How are you still alive? Spot, I fucking hate everything. It's like, okay, you got me there.
The devil called up 20 years ago. I told him to fuck off.
And I have actually met people who say that. And I'm like, ugh, okay, I'm not gonna piss you off anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go walk away.
I had customers like I had customers ride their motorcycles to doctor's appointments. You can't ride your motorcycles anymore. All right, well, gotta ride at home, though.
I'll do what I want. I don't care. And so this was around, Christmas time, November, December time frame when, her mother came to stay with them in Emporia because she couldn't be on the farm with she was in her 80s, so it's like, no point staying out there.
Yeah, just sell the farm.
But then in 1953, January, Nannie did the unthinkable. She poisoned her own mother.
I mean, is it really unthinkable at this point?
I think it's because her mother was getting in the way of things.
No.
Nannie was already planning to kill her husband, Dick. So, her mother stepping into the mix kind of went bad. But that's 7 people now. That's 7 people now.
She only 7.
Only 7 in the span of almost 30 years.
Those are rookie numbers. We need to get those numbers up.
But then in March 1953, just a few months later, Richard was also poisoned to death. That makes 8. The doctors, they didn't do autopsies on these.
Clearly, and they didn't just look in general, I don't think. What happened? He died.
That's
Fair
pretty
enough.
much the diagnosis back then. That was pretty much the
He died of
diagnosis.
certain death. How sure? Certainly sure.
And it wouldn't even surprise me if Nannie had taken collected a life insurance policy on Richard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what probably happened with all the others. She collected them all. That was like her main thing, was getting the life insurance money, because back then, $500, which was for
$500 could buy you all the things. And $500 now is
nothing.
a tank of gas.
A tank of gas at this point, yeah.
That's the real depressing part.
Why'd you get too real?
You
got so real with that, dude. Good lord. You monster.
Yeah, who's the real monster here?
Well, currently Nannie.
Yeah, I haven't murdered that many people.
Well, let's hope you don't. Don't even murder one person. June 1953, Nannie met and married Samuel Doss of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we're finally in Oklahoma. This is husband
5?
number 5.
Jesus.
Yeah, and she on the first one divorced, the last 3 died. So now we're on number 5. She met and married Samuel Doss of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Same day?
No,
I feel like with her track record, it keeps getting a shorter amount of time.
Yep. And Samuel Doss, or Sam, as I'm going to shorten it to him, he didn't worry about your husband's had died. Well, I'm not too worried about that. Didn't worry about that. Of all the things, he was a Nazarene minister, the antithesis of her former husbands. There was no drinking, no smoking, no adultery. He was a massive penny pincher. He didn't cuss, he didn't gamble, nothing. He was seen as clean and crisp. He had his hair kept nice. His suits were tailored immaculately. Like, he would make sure that they were pressed and everything.
So he was you?
No.
Oh, wait, no, you drinking, cussing.
Yeah, he was not me. But, he looked like a rich man, even though he worked for the state as, a highway inspector. But he always wore a tie. He was always very well put together. But there was one thing about him that kind of went wrong. A couple things that went south with this marriage.
I'm gonna take a guess.
Okay, take a guess.
What his issue was.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say this. He was a man of the cloth.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
My guess is up then.
Okay, that was a good guess, because Nazarene minister, but no, Nazarenes, they're not Catholic, though. Now, if you're a Catholic priest...
I wasn't trying to call anyone out.
Now, if you're a Catholic priest, though, you can be a man of the cloth, and you are devoted to the church. That's how it is.
Oh, yeah. So what was Mr. Nazarene's...
What was Mr. Doss's issue? He didn't like romance novels that Nannie liked. What an absolute asshole, am I right?
How dare he not like smut?
Exactly. But in all seriousness, though, he hated television and radio. He didn't like them. He thought it...
Oh, he was one of those guys.
This is the 1950s.
It's the gateway to the devil.
Yep. He also saw romance novels and magazines as lurid and not worth the time. He was a very strict man, even going so far that he had bedtime set at 9:30 p.m. No excuses. Lights were out by then.
Usually passing out at 9:30.
Same here. But he was a man who was in his early 50s. So just like saying where he was set at, so.
Yeah.
Even further, you were whole like he's a man of the cloth, joking that, he stays celibate. Sex was scheduled one day out of the week at 9 o'clock, just before lights out. And they're both people who are in their late 40s, early 50s. No kids.
Okay, you're the real monster now. You're trying to put that image in people's heads like that.
Ew, I love it. That's hilarious.
Jerry, you motherfucker.
Anyway, Nannie didn't like this, and so what did she do? She fled back to Alabama to get away from Samuel. And what did he do? He was actually chasing after her. He would send out letters of forgiveness, and he pled for her to come back. To even sweeten the deal and get her back. He
scheduled sex 30 minutes earlier.
No?
Oh.
He opened up his pocketbook. You know how much he was a penny pincher?
Yeah.
He opened up his pocketbook and he said, here's the money to live the kind of lifestyle that you used to live before you met me. He still had control of the finances, though.
Oh, yeah.
But he was like, here, I will let you have this. Just keep in mind, I still own the finances, so don't go too crazy, but you're going to get a close enough taste that you can go back to living how you used to live before me. Even further, and this is, he put out not one, but 2 life insurance policies on himself, just to show how much he'd stop penny pinching. And it was at this moment we realized he fucked up. Mm-hmm.
I'm just picturing her in Alabama reading that and just like in a gas station, like, I gotta go.
And then like her eyes become cartoonish, like dollar signs, like cha-ching.
Yeah, like the wolf. Like
yeah. Be happy as ever.
Oh my god, what an idiot.
So, September 1954.
He died.
Nannie has since come back, and Samuel would be sent to the hospital with flu-like symptoms, and he was treated for severe digestive tract infection, which was the result of a poisoned prune cake that Nannie made for him. You mentioned the cake earlier, how she'd make a cake and pie and stuff. There you go. And
I don't like prunes. So.
And after a month of hospitalization, Samuel came back home in October, only to be finished off by Nannie with arsenic-laden coffee.
I feel like I guess it was the 50s. I mean, how do you get a hold of arsenic?
Yeah, it was the 50s. Just go to the pharmacist.
Yeah, just go to the dollar store.
Go to the pharmacist and be like, yeah, I need some arsenic. Well, rat poison is arsenic.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So, but it was a bit more common to get back then before a lot of like laws were put into place. And so she then tried to collect the insurance money on both policies that he had put against himself. But the doctor who had treated Samuel for that entire month suspected foul play. and he asked for an autopsy.
My God, the man has a degree.
This was Nannie's undoing. This was finally the straw that broke the camel's back for her. When the autopsy was done, a large amount of arsenic was found in Samuel's system. And shortly thereafter, Nannie was arrested.
For what?
Murder. For absolute murder.
Speeding.
And so she was taken in and she was investigated and interrogated. She acted casual about it. Like, she would be reading the news articles from the Lonely Hearts columns and the romantic magazines like she used to do, and not even look up. And investigative journalists would ask her to put the magazine down, and she wouldn't. She would just sit there and be reading, no thoughts about it. She even giggled about the aspect of killing everybody, not really owning up to it, which is where she got the moniker, the Giggling Granny.
That's disturbing.
She very much just didn't care, until eventually she spilled the beans. She confessed to killing 4 husbands, her sister Dubby, her own mother, 2 of her daughters, 2 of her grandkids, as well as her mother-in-law, Sarah Lanning. And because she was in Oklahoma at the time, the state only charged her for Samuel Doss's murder. Out of everything, 11 people, only convicted of 1.
What was her sentence, though?
After she was found mentally capable of standing trial and pleading guilty on May 17th, 1955, she was sentenced to life imprisonment, not given the death penalty due to being a woman at the time.
But just life.
In the state penitentiary in McAllister. And then she only served for about 10 years before she died of leukemia in 1965.
Jesus Christ.
Yep. And that ends our story of Nannie Doss. A little old lady who wasn't so much, the sweet grandma.
A nice little old granny.
Yep. And if you look up other photos of her, she's always smiling and just looks like she's giggling, and it's disturbing, dude.
So on a scale of 1 to 10 on how creepy that is...
How creeped out are you?
That's about an 8.5. That's about an 8.5 right there.
Okay, that's actually fair. It doesn't affect me nearly as much because I did a lot of the research, so I guess I'm a little...
Yeah, you're numb to it.
Yeah, I'm numb to it now.
5 husbands.
4 dead husbands.
That first one's got to be like... He had to be reading the newspapers like, ho...
I dodged a bullet!
Oh, I'm going to go play the lottery now.
Yep.
Jesus.
By
presumably her 2 daughters.
Oh, no, her 2 daughters, she did eventually confess to that.
Okay.
Before she confessed, she was like, I didn't do nothing. They died of food poisoning because I didn't cook right. It's like, no, you poisoned them.
Yeah, like you made a prune cake. That's poison enough. That was for her last husband. She was like eggs or something. Like a standard breakfast for her 2 daughters. Yeah, but I mean, like, her MO is food poisoning.
Yep.
And coffee poisoning.
I did actually look into, the poison is a woman's weapon thing. That's a fairly sexist attitude. But in this instance, it did
nail
fit.
It well.
It did fit for the sake of it because...
And on the skull?
It fit for this just because she mainly did do that. She didn't use a knife. She didn't use a gun. She didn't use a hatchet. She used poison. She used arsenic, rat poison, whatever she could get her hands on.
Up until, a doctor did his job.
Yep.
She was free and clear. Like, had it
not been the doctor
had
who
he
had
not showed up to class a couple of times.
Yeah. Had that doctor not checked over Sam Doss and then gone, this isn't right. This isn't right. This man was healthy when he left. He can't just die suddenly. We checked on him for a month. He had a long time of recovery, and to just up and die out of the blue definitely was suspicious to the doctor.
That is insane.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to reverse Uno card you on this.
Ah, crap.
I did know a little bit of her.
You did?
Like, I've seen the pictures of her, and I knew... I've heard the Giggling Granny moniker, and I knew she, a streak of husbands.
Mm-hmm.
but that was all I knew. That lady's evil.
Oh yeah, I actually had to look into Bluebeard as well, which I kind of wish I covered this at the beginning of the episode. But whatever the case, Bluebeard is a literary character who appears in mostly French stuff, I think.
Yeah, that sounds very French-ish.
And he's like, Baron Bluebeard is his name. And he meets this woman, and he gets a wife, and he says he's had many wives before, and that he tells his next wife not to open the basement. And he accidentally drops a key, and so then she takes the key, opens the basement, and then finds out, oh, this has all the dead bodies in it of his ex-wives. And then he comes home, finds out she did this, tries to kill her, and she ultimately, I think with her brothers, kills him.
Jesus.
Yeah. So in short, so being called the Lady Bluebeard, killing spouses for money, and or anything else like that, that's definitely
falls in line with her.
Absolutely. And she was a Black Widow as well,
clearly.
But man, it's still funny to me because she seems so unassuming. That's the worst part about it. And it's like, people will say, well, all the other serial killers were unassuming. It's like, most of them are also dudes. And if you look at a lot of the guys who have been serial killers,
you can tell.
There's something off about them. It's in their eyes. But she looks like a granny, and it just doesn't make me think of anything else. In fact, she actually brings up a couple of characters from a play and what eventually became a movie that I watched years ago. It was called Arsenic and Old Lace. It starred in it was based in the 1940s, and the movie starred Cary Grant in a very funny role. He was a comedic man.
Yeah.
Very very expressive. Who he plays a critic who hates romance. He's like, oh, romance is dumb. Like, everything you see in the plays and on the movies is dumb and wrong. In reality, he actually has found himself a woman that he wants to marry. He found himself a fiancée. And so he goes to tell his matronly aunts, the women who raised him, and his brother who believes he is Theodore Roosevelt.
Are you his brother?
No, but it's pretty funny. So, and so then he talks to them, and they're just casual about it. They're like, we kill people. Like, we've killed people who have no family, or they're vagrants, or nobody's gonna miss them, so we just poison them with arsenic, and then we bury them down in the basement thanks to Teddy's help. And they're just casual about it, and he's like, Aunties, what's wrong with you?
Do you hear yourself talking about this right now?
I think that was actually a line in the play, and they're just like, oh, yes, we know, we just think we're doing a service. And they're just so casual and nonchalant about it, which is the funny part. It's just like, oh my god, this is wrong, but pretty funny.
So, I feel like, and this may be skewed because I'm male, but I feel like female serial killers are way more terrifying. Because there's a subtlety to it for most of them, I assume. And that's because guys are... We're dumb.
It's like 85% of the time it is male serial killers.
Yeah.
There's that 15%. Yeah.
Is...
This was one of the first ones that I knew of who was a female serial killer. There's a couple more out there.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some more disturbing stuff out there that I'm looking forward to do. I'm not even going to kid you.
To what?
To look into them.
Oh, no.
Nobody can see it, but I have a very big grin on my face right now, and Tony's...
Girl power, yeah!
And Tony's kind of creeping out right now. He's like, uh-oh. Like, what have I got myself into with this idiot?
I don't remember signing this part of the contract.
So what are we going to do for our next episode? Or do we want to just keep that up in the air and figure it out as we go, huh?
I mean, up in the air is a pretty good clue.
All right, up in the air, huh?
Yeah.
That works. We'll just keep it a mystery for everybody for next episode. Once again...
I thought you were doing it.
I'm keeping this in. I'm Tim, he's Tony. This has been
I'm Tony. You're Tim.
This has been Tall and Short, so I hope you've enjoyed it. We do have an email address now.
Oh, Jesus.
I made certain of it.
So if you want to send us spam emails, you know.
If you want to send us emails, if you want to chat with us, our new email is tallandshort@gmail.com. That is one word, tall and short, A-N-D, not the ampersand symbol.
Is the tall, like, all capitalized?
No, it's all lowercase.
Damn.
So, tallandshort@gmail.com. You can send us emails, tell us, give us updates on anything, or...
Tell us we suck.
Or,
tell us Tim sucks.
Tell us Tony sucks.
You suck.
I'll throw the Uno reverse card back at you, buddy.
Oh, shit, I don't have a cat to throw at you now.
Okay, here's an Uno stop card. There you go. But thank you all for listening, and hope you all have an amazing day. And don't eat poisoned prune cakes.
Don't eat prunes. Just don't eat prunes.
Hey everyone, Tim here. So I gave the wrong email address in the initial recording, so here it actually is. Don't go to the one I did say, go to this one instead. It's tallandshortpod@gmail.com. That's tallandshortpod, all one word, @gmail.com. TALLANDSHORTPOD @gmail.com. Thank you very much.